Hello BookTube, today I would like to do a short review of the graphic novel The Nao of Brown by Glyn Dillon. This is a kind of slice of life graphic novel which documents a sort of shortish space in time in the life of Nao Brown, who is a half Japanese, half English, I guess, young woman living and working in London, a young woman who suffers from obsessive an obsession with violent daydreams, basically. So she imagines hurting people around her, people that she passes, people that she's with, in a sort of playing out the worst case scenario. You know, sometimes it's accidents, sometimes it's her hurting people on purpose. This really struck a chord with me because I have imagined those things myself. I've daydreamed sort of sinister things and wondered what was wrong with me, and not really ever spoken about those things to people because, you know, it does make you feel like you're crazy and it's very hard to communicate if it's something that you experience, you know, in an articulate way that makes you feel like you're going to be heard and received well. There is a story within the story which is also really interesting. I really like the use of folk tales and fairy tales and people telling each other stories within the main story. I think that's a really nice little device because I get a bonus story and it kind of always works out, it kind of always helps. And it expands the universe of the main story a little bit each time and reminds us that there are more layers and meta, etc. It's really nice. Being originally from London myself and reading the foreword by Jessica Hines, which really evoked a sense of London for me, I felt very akin to the setting, the time and the place of this book, the sort of characters, the way they speak to each other, the habits that they have. They drink tea a lot and use tea as a sort of remedy and healing process, which obviously if you're a tea drinker you know the importance of. If you don't, I'm not sure I can communicate it to you because there is nothing quite like it. Tea is the ultimate magic medicine for all ills. The feeling that you get if you're a tea drinker when tea appears in a story or in life, there are massive associations. It's an emotional thing. That's wonderful and it's really British, and I loved that being a feature in this. Nao actually comments on that in she goes to a Buddhist centre in London and they drink tea there, and she comments on how British that is, and I really liked that. The artwork is absolutely stunning. It's been written and illustrated by Glyn Dillon. The colour palette is really nice. It's got really nice reds and dark blues and greys. One of the running themes in the colour palette is red, which is really important. Nao always has red lips and a red item of clothing and other red things around her all the time. When she doesn't, you really notice it, but red is just a consistent theme. It's obviously very important to her, and it just adds a really, red being my favourite colour, it's just a gorgeous level. It levels the book up one for me. One of the big elements in the artwork and in the story is that Nao is really interested in Japanese culture and Japanese toys, or designer toys, so they feature in this. So if you're into anime and manga and stuff like that, she's your cup of tea. My favourite character was Nao, the protagonist, because she's just amazing. She's really funny and really cute. She's kind of girly and funny, but also quite adult and sarcastic, and, you know, has a history like anybody grown up and working in London does. She's interesting, she's layered, she's a really great female character. I love the hints of her mum that appear in the story as well. They're really, really nice. They make me happy. Like, they make... Her mum is a kind of happy place for her, and I feel the same sense of happy place when the pictures of her mum appear. There are also just some really funny bits. At one point she's chasing a fly in the shop and she says, I don't know if you can see that, and it's impossible to swat a fly. I think they must live in the future. And I really liked that. The one character I tried but didn't quite get there with, I think if I realistically bumped into this person, and in reality I don't think I would try to get to know this person, and I don't think even if I did give them the time of day, I think Gregory would prove difficult for me to be accepting of. His flaws aren't the sum of him, that's very clear in this, but I still had trouble placing Nao and Gregory together as a couple, and I don't know, I just couldn't quite accept Gregory. I do accept him. I do want him. I do accept him in the story, and I really like their relationship. It's very real, it's very honest, it's raw, it's what I imagine I could have gone through if I had grown up in London and stayed in London and gone on these strange blind dates, you know, asked out strangers who I just happened to be interested in, and taken advantage of those moments, which are rare in a big city like London, because yes, you can meet hundreds and thousands of people that you might connect with, because, you know, chances are maybe higher of, in that microcosm of the world, finding somebody on a like wavelength as you. But at the same time, if you're living in a small town, chances are you're going to keep bumping into the person that you're slightly interested in. So time can move slower. You have the allowance of time. So I really loved her chasing after Gregory in that moment and making that happen. This book made me think about a time when I was younger, when I used to look at people's faces and the shapes of people's faces and imagine. Now, before I say the word, because there are massive associations with this word that invoke quite powerful responses, so I imagined with the blunt side down, facing down, a knife being flat upon these people's forehead and running down their faces over the grooves, and sort of bending and flowing like water over the grooves of their faces. And that's just how I visualized and sort of made sense of the different shapes on different people's faces. And I've never voiced that to anyone before because it feels mental. So it was really nice, actually, and really liberating to read about someone else actually having these thoughts. That sounds really cheesy and obvious, but I genuinely have had those thoughts before and have never voiced them because they seem too crazy, and I didn't think anybody would accept that. And I thought, even if I say this to my parents, if I say it out loud, that will be the end of our relationship. They won't get me anymore. They will think, okay, she's crazy. This was gorgeous. I really, really loved it. I can't pretend to know what happens at the end. It's kind of open, in the sense that it's sort of a philosophical feeling at the end, more than a this happened, that happened. I found this really moving, affecting, funny. It was all the things that it needed to be, and I really enjoyed it. I will definitely pick this book up again. I got it from my local library, so you should too if you can. This was from York Library. But I will definitely be buying a copy for my shelf so that I can look at it whenever I want to, because the artwork is stunning. My favourite moment is on page 201. I'm not going to tell you what happens because that might spoil it for you. It's not massively plot driven, but that moment is just really beautiful and really cute, and it made me do a little squee, and it's what tipped the book over into 5 stars for me, because it was just that extra bit beautiful and satisfying and rounded off. So thank you for this book. It's moved me and it's really gotten inside me, and I'm grateful that it exists. I would recommend this book to anybody who lives or has lived in London, anybody who's British and sort of knows that kind of world, anybody who's a tea drinker, anybody who's into graphic novels at all, anyone who's slightly into anime or manga, anyone who's into kind of creepy folk tales, slightly dark, distorted folk or fairy tales. Anybody who likes slice of life stories, because essentially that's what it is. It's set in modern day London, it's realistic, it's raw, it's honest, it's very much set in the real world, and uses metaphor and surrealism sometimes to expand on the exploration and the sort of explanation of what is happening to somebody who's very real. So there we go. So that was my review of The Nao of Brown by Glyn Dillon. I will include a link down below for you to go and read more about it on Amazon or Goodreads. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.